Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
I'm Dawn.
And I'm Cole.
And Scottish Murders is a true crime podcast dedicated to people from or living in Scotland.
Just like anywhere else in the world, these murders can be truly horrific and shocking, and we want to shine more light upon them.
Join us every 2 weeks on Scottish Murders, where we'll bring you cases both solved and unsolved, giving you an insight into the other side of bonnie Scotland.
Find us wherever you stream your podcasts, as well as on social media.
Join us there. Bye!
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Heather.
How's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing?
I feel star-spangled.
Yeah? You still recovering?
We had a fourth.
We did have some say it was the most important fourth of this country's history. It's like maybe one last fourth before it all falls apart.
Yes, absolutely. Are you ready to get into some true crime today, Dylan?
I woke up this morning and I thought that exact thing. I'm ready to get into some true crime today, and here we are.
Here we are. Let's not dilly-dally, not Dylan-y-dally.
No, I don't think we have time to mess around. You have another incredible story from the Mountain Murders Vault, and I say we dive straight in.
Well, Dylan, this is going to be a two-parter. That's why I said we should go ahead, get started. We have two parts. Dropping the first part today.
Oh, that means it has a lot of information.
It does. So Dayton, Ohio. Are you familiar with Dayton?
I've been through there.
Well, it's a city in western Ohio, the sixth most populous city in the state, located within the Miami Valley region, about 50 miles north of Cincinnati and 60 miles west of Columbus. Founded along the Great Miami River, it grew in the 19th century as a canal town with up to 70 boats a month supplementing the roads serving the city.
Oh, wow.
I thought you would find that interesting.
Does that sound, boat materials being transported by boat was very important to this country early on.
It allowed goods and people to be transported in and out of the city. Construction of the first railroads didn't happen until 1851, considered a slow development by all accounts. I mean, most places were starting to see railroads by the middle of the 19th century. Eventually, 9 railroads would pass through, while abundant supplies of coal and iron were easily accessible, making it a prime spot for manufacturing and industrial work. A Dayton resident invented the paper bag machine and the stepladder.
Oh, wow.
One of the most successful companies in Dayton was the National Cash Register Company. By 1900, Dayton was the city with the largest number of awarded patents to inventors and innovators.
Damn.
So thanks for the stepladder and the paper bag, Dayton.
Well, I got to say, that's two very important inventions to humankind. And if you hear some background noise, it is apparently the world is coming down outside. A bad storm. Thunderstorm. But I never knew that Dayton was so important and such an innovative place.
You know what the weather's trying to tell you, Dylan?
What's that?
In the words of AC/DC, you've been thunderstruck.
Yeah. Oh my God! How many cups of coffee have you had today?
None.
I don't believe it.
None. This right now, I'm thriving on spite. I'm surviving on spite.
She's like, I'm measuring pots, you son of a bitch.
I'd rather be whoring than choring.
Oh my gosh.
It was home to the Wright brothers, who developed the first successful motor-operated airplane.
Yeah, and also sued everyone else who tried to fly after they did that.
You know, North
they were
Carolina
dicks.
likes to say we were first in flight, but there's always that argument with Ohio
Right.
about which state really was first in flight.
Yeah. The Wright brothers were dicks, if you know about their history.
Yeah, they were.
They were assholes. They sued everybody who tried to even think about flying. They acted like they owned flying.
Maybe they did. Maybe they got a patent because they were from Dayton.
So I did not know they were from Dayton. I mean, I almost kind of assumed that they were from North Carolina.
No, they
mistakenly.
just flew at Kitty Hawk.
Right.
Those at the dunes.
The favorable winds.
It had a strong industrialized economy into the 20th century and was home to the Dayton Project, which was a branch of the Manhattan Project, which developed polonium triggers used in the early atomic bombs. And if you're in Dayton, you can check out the National Museum of the United States Air Force.
Wow.
So I thought I'd give you a little background about Dayton.
Well, it sounds like I need to just quit passing through. I need to actually pull over in Dayton and look at things.
Oops, my bad. In 1900, the population of Dayton was around 85,000 residents. Several months before our case begins, on February 1st of 1900, Dayton experienced what was likely the largest fire in the city's history. A blaze began at Leaf Tobacco warehouses of J.P. Wolf & Sons at the northwest corner of Foundry and First Streets. It's an area where the Dayton Dragons Stadium stands now. The entire block was destroyed. 4 6-story buildings belonging to P.J. Wolf & Son were gutted from top to bottom. A 3-story building belonging to the Dayton Paper Novelty Company was also destroyed. Then Ezra Brim & Son, along with a retail grocery store, a saloon, a restaurant, and a tobacco company, along with the Harder Medicine Company, were destroyed. A railway station behind the buildings received minor damage. Luckily, there were no fatalities reported, but several firemen sustained injuries during this event. The loss was estimated at $600,000, which would be over $21 million by today's inflation calculator.
Damn. So It was a very serious event.
Yeah, it was pretty devastating and traumatic for residents. George Coy was the most seriously injured fireman. He was hit by a falling wall of flaming bricks. It knocked him out. He suffered a broken collarbone and a dislocated shoulder.
Damn.
So I just thought that was a kind of an interesting. I was looking into what was happening in Dayton during the year 1900 when our story takes place, and happened to stumble upon that and was like, wow, that's a pretty major event in a city.
Yeah. Being struck by a falling wall of flaming bricks. Now, that's a real man right there. He just had a broken collarbone.
Sounds not fun.
No, it sounds very scary.
So Saturday, October 13th of 1900, Charles and Carrie Lance, a married couple, they shared the same birthday. Their 6 children, ranging in ages from 18 to 4 years old, had planned a surprise party for their parents. 11-year-old Ada Lance was tickled to be included in the party planning, and she was very proud that she had managed to keep the secret from her parents. And I say this, Dylan, because Ada was a bit of a talker. Much like yourself.
Oh, you think I can't keep a secret?
Oh, man, you never shut up.
No, but I ain't going to tell the secret.
But you don't talk.
I'm going to talk about having a secret.
You're going to talk nonstop. She was described by teachers as an interesting little talker and, quote, one of the brightest scholars in her class. Ada was a sweet-natured child with a bit of a stubborn streak. Her parents said she could be a little rascal at times.
Okay.
She was also cheerful and easygoing. Ada liked eavesdropping on adult conversations, particularly at the dinner table, then repeating the gossip to her friends. Yet Ada was considered kind of small for her age. She was the shortest in her class and was plagued by colds and asthmatic types of attacks. Recently, her spasmodic coughing had left blood on her pillow, and she was due to see a physician pretty soon, like for this issue.
Yeah.
Most of the party guests lived in the neighborhood, so around 8 p.m., Carrie answered the door wearing a dirty apron to find 15 couples standing on her porch. When Charles came downstairs, his suspenders were hanging down to his ankles. I mean, these were definitely not people planning to have guests.
So they were very surprised.
They were, Dylan. Fred Lance, the eldest of the couple's children, shouted, quote, "We finally got him." See, Charles was a bit of a trickster himself who playfully teased his children. Ada was his favorite, and he liked ribbing the girl, who had kind of by now learned when her father was, pulling her leg.
Yeah.
Charles pointed his finger at Ada and said, quote, "I'll get you for this. I'll get even, you just wait." And Ada was just super excited. She loved that she'd managed to kind of get one over on her dad.
Now, have you ever had a surprise party like this thrown for you?
No, I don't have any friends. No.
Have you ever been to a surprise party?
I don't think so.
Because I don't know that they're real. I think it's like something that you just hear about.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to one either.
And I would not enjoy a surprise party.
You would not?
No, because I got to get ready. I got to get mentally prepared for something like this. I would be shocked. They would catch me pooping in the bathroom or something.
Well, don't worry. I'm never going to plan one for you.
You're not a surprise. There is no surprise.
Surprise. You're never getting a surprise.
But now, how do I believe you? See, now I think you're setting me up for, indeed, a surprise. Jeez.
Only time will tell.
It's like a mind fucking.
Only time will tell.
So they surprised their parents, caught them completely unawares, and they are just tickled to death about it.
Yeah, and especially little Ada, because she's 11, and she is not too far away from being 12 years old. And she likes to kind of consider herself now to be a big girl.
She's grown.
And so she felt, kind of cool that her older siblings were including her in this party planning.
Okay.
She was able to keep the secret. And again, her dad's always kind of tricking everybody and pulling pranks. So she finally managed to get one over on her dad.
Nice.
Yeah. And, so it's a great event, Dylan.
Sounds like fun.
Despite what you think about surprise parties, it sounds fun. F-U-N, Dylan, fun.
All right, with capitals.
Fred, he's their 18-year-old son, he played mandolin, and his band entertained the party. The children had hidden away prepared snacks in the cellar and surprised their parents again with a spread of bread, preserves, homemade pretzels with mustard, strudels, beer, and wine.
Wow.
And then guests brought an assortment of snacks and dishes as well. So this sounds like a really fun kind of potluck surprise party. By 10 p.m., the party was in full swing. Everyone was socializing while some guests danced to the live music in the living room. Carrie Lance suggested that everyone play a card game called Ukra or Ukra.
Okra?
Have you ever played it?
Yeah, you get down to when you have 30 cards left, you scream okra and slam your hand down.
Is that it?
Yeah.
For real?
No.
That sounds terrible.
I'm just... it's not. I don't know what it is. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay.
But I also don't play a lot of card games.
I don't, but, sometimes they can be fun. We've had friends describe card games to us before, and we're just like, oh, my God. But it ended up being fun.
Well, Texas Hold'em's pretty fun.
Texas Hold'em's pretty fun.
I feel like the only card games I ever played were drinking games.
Oh, yeah?
Like Waterfalls. Did you ever play that?
No.
Okay.
I never needed a game to drink.
Well, that's the truth.
I just drink.
Yeah, it's also not very fun when you do it.
It's not very fun when I do it.
So this was a game, I guess, Ukra was popular among their friend group. So around the same time that the adults are playing this card game, Ada and her best friend, Lily Brandon, came downstairs for a few treats. Lily's father was a patrolman named Charles Brandon, who also lived on the street with the Lances. At 10 p.m., Lily approached Mrs. Lance to ask, "Do you know where Ada is?" Carrie suggested to Lily that maybe Ada had gone upstairs, for bed already, because Ada had mentioned earlier she had a little bit of a headache. It was about 5 minutes later that Lily returned saying Ada was not in her bedroom. Mrs. Lance got up from the card game, agreeing to help Lily find Ada. They went upstairs and checked each bedroom, but there was no sign of the little girl. Then Mrs. Lance mentioned the headache and how sometimes Ada liked to go outside for fresh air. By now it was dark in the backyard. They did have a bit of a lantern providing some light, but overall, it was pretty dark out there. No street lights.
Right.
None of that luxury we have today.
Yeah, lights are a big
The
deal.
luxury of lights.
And can you imagine back when there were just no lights anywhere save for a candle you're holding or maybe a small fire or something like that? It'd be kind of scary.
Well, it'd be like Game of Thrones. The dark. What was it? The night is dark and full of terrors.
It's true.
Terrors.
That's why people went their ass to bed.
Yeah. However, the pair found no sign of 11-year-old Ada. The backyard, the front yard.
So now they've made a cursory, they've checked the house, they've checked upstairs, now they've checked the yard, and I'm going to assume they're starting to get a little bit worried or more confused more than anything else.
Well, you're right, Dylan. Back inside, Mrs. Lance found her husband in the kitchen chatting with guests. She sort of pulled him aside, whispering that Ada was missing because she didn't want to trouble their friends. Fred overheard his mother suggesting that Ada may, he had overheard his mother, and so he suggested, Ada may be outside stargazing because that was one of her favorite pastimes. Charles and Fred returned outdoors to look for Ada. After knocking on the outhouse door, they realized she was not in there either. The father and son returned to the house. By now, they are starting to, kind of panic a little bit. Guests were now starting to retrieve their coats and milling around the front door, saying their goodbyes. Charles approached Officer Brandon, who was one of his best friends, and told him that Ada was missing. Brandon slipped away to grab his lantern in order to help look for the child. Brandon squeezed through a narrow space on the west side of the house and found the gate unlatched, which was unusual. He then circled the property and checked the alleyway, calling the little girl's name. So by now, the guests who are starting to kind of depart are realizing something is amiss.
Right.
They can sense something's going on. Charles returns frantic, telling his wife that they have not been able to find the child because by now they're kind of all circling around the house, including Officer Brandon. And Officer Brandon suggested a few of the men check with other neighbors. Ada's name began echoing through the neighborhood as a search party set out on the streets. As others heard the commotion, they donned jackets to join the search efforts. And by now the streets were lit by many lanterns. There were probably about a dozen people engaged in this search, including party guests and neighbors.
So without even organizing, basically the whole neighborhood's turned out to look for her.
Yes. Carrie was worried. Coyotes had been spotted recently, and Officer Brandon had already warned parents about letting their children out at night. Because of the coyotes and also because there were some transients and hobos down near the railroad tracks, which were just a few blocks away from where they lived. A few men went down to the Cincinnati, Hamilton, Dayton Railroad, which was 2 square blocks away. It was known as a hangout for those types of people.
Just passing through hobos.
The hobos.
Yeah.
The bums.
The
as
bums.
they were called. The tramps of the day.
Yeah.
McCabe Park was also within walking distance, and it was an area that had a reputation for unsavory characters and crime, especially at night. There was a lot of drunkards, guns firing, fights.
So it's like downtown Asheville.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Hobos stabbing people with dirty needles.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's just like
yes.
downtown Asheville.
After a 25 to 30 minute search, the men gathered back in the Lance's yard. Someone suggested checking the outhouse again, saying that maybe she had fallen in, but Charles was like, she's too big to fall in. But he was willing to check once more just out of sheer panic. And I was thinking about this. I mean, that's 1900. That's not really that far off. And to think people still had outhouses.
Yeah.
Most people didn't have indoor plumbing.
No, only I would think the rich.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my great-grandparents had indoor plumbing until like the 40s or 50s.
I worked with a guy who was, I think maybe a year or two older than me, and he had an outhouse. They used the outhouse until he was 13 years old.
So up until what, the 80s?
Yeah.
His family had an outhouse.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Isn't it?
I'm so weirded out by the
Idea
thought of an outhouse.
You'd have to, well.
Dude, I remember being a kid and going to this country church, kind of out rural country church with some cousins. And honestly, I can't believe they weren't handling snakes at this place because it was kind of like one of those.
Okay.
You got that vibe.
They were very full of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. And going and like saying, I've got to go to the bathroom. And my cousin's like, oh, well, it's outside, and took me to an outhouse
Shut up.
at this church.
This church had an outhouse?
Yes. And this would have been probably the late 80s, early 90s.
So it's so far out in the sticks, there's probably not even an option for,
I mean,
water.
I'm pretty sure people out there had indoor plumbing, Dylan, but for whatever reason, this church did not.
They'd never spent the money to get it
And
installed.
that was probably the one and only time I've ever used like an outhouse.
And how'd you feel about that?
I did not like it.
Did it smell?
Yes. I don't like porta potties.
It smelled like a poo hole in the ground.
I don't want to use any of that. I don't want to
Yeah.
do it. I like creature comforts.
You like your toilet? You like to?
Plumbing and being able to flush.
You like saying bye to your turd and never seeing it again?
Yeah,
or smelling
like
it.
how I would tell your granddaughter, tell it bye-bye, and then flush and wave. It's
Yeah.
leaving.
And I'm telling you, if I couldn't do courtesy flushes, I don't think I'd make it. Because I do those for me, not just for other people.
God, you need to do something.
I'm telling you what, a demon has been living in my bumhole for about a week and a half now.
Good God, exercise it.
I don't know. We've tried. The power of Christ could not compel it a bit.
Just get away from me.
Come here. Get over here.
You're gross.
I can't help it, Heather.
This is why you've not had any physical affections for a long time.
Hey, look, I use baby wipes. I'm clean.
Are you, though?
Well, I need some scalding water back there, I
You
think.
need some damn bleach. I'm going to sew that thing up. Lowering a lantern inside the vault, the outhouse vault. You can kind of imagine what that is, right?
Yeah, there's actually some major historical disasters that involve it caving into this big, this chamber, this poo chamber that would be under like castles and things like that. It would be a large area. It wouldn't just be a tiny hole in the ground.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're lowering a lantern down inside the vault, and that's when Officer Brandon spotted something. It was a shoe.
Oh, my gosh.
Upon closer examination, because the drop was about 15 feet down, Charles agreed it was Ada's shoe.
Oh, my God.
He ordered someone in the crowd to find an object they could use to hook the shoe with. And that's when the men gathered a rope and some poles, trying to construct some sort of way to retrieve the shoe.
So it's just the shoe.
By now, around 70 people were gathered in the backyard, witnessing the men work with quickness. As they pulled, excrement oozed from the outhouse area.
Oh, God.
Soon the men realized it wasn't just a shoe, it was the child.
Oh, my gosh.
Ada had been dropped down, into the tank.
Now, can you imagine once this realization hits them?
No, this is absolutely horrible. Fred threatened to jump in and get her. Carrie nearly fainted, and Charles was near hysteria. Brandon ordered someone to find a ladder. So the men began pulling boards up from the outhouse, like the seat.
Right.
And throwing them into a pile. The ladder was lowered in, and Fred began stepping down in until he was able to retrieve his sister.
Oh, my gosh.
The child, now covered in excrement, was placed on the ground. Charles tried to revive her. He wanted to believe that she was still alive, but Officer Brandon had to tell his best friend, "She's dead, Charles. She's dead." Terrible. Fred and Brandon carried the little girl back to the house through the throngs of people who had gathered, because again, there's 70 people out here witnessing this.
Yeah.
Everyone was sobbing in the crowd. Carrie told them to bring Ada into the kitchen where she would clean her up. So the women who'd gathered went to work immediately, grabbing towels, rags, wash basins. Someone began heating water on the stove. Fred and Charles cried while Officer Brandon held them both. Ada's clothes were nearly gone. She was wearing a shredded slip. Okay, this is kind of conflicting. One report said she was wearing underpants, but then another report says they found her undergarments, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm not really sure what undergarments they mean.
So she's in some type of state of undress.
Yes. And she was wearing one shoe. As the women washed the child, they could see there was blood on the underpants, and she had a gash on her cheek. Charles asked a guest to throw the clothing into a barrel in the driveway and burn it. From the discovery of Ada's body to the removal of it from the outhouse had taken about 30 minutes. Brandon ran down the street to the nearest phone to call police and alert them a child had been involved in a terrible accident. He told them not to send the police, but a coroner. That was around 11:35 p.m. because at this point, they're all still thinking it's an accident.
Right. That somehow, some way she ended up falling into and you think when you think outhouse, you think, oh, a little hole in the ground, but that's
15 feet down.
15 feet down into the sludge, essentially, of excrement and whatever, and that would be a bad fall, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you slip and you're already seated and you fall in an awkward angle, so that they're assuming it's an accident.
An hour later, Coroner Hatcher and a detective arrived to investigate the death. The women were still cleaning the little girl, and now they were all covered in this mess. But they told the detective that they noticed a gash on her cheek and some strange bruising on her body as they were cleaning her. Coroner Hatcher and the detective began interviewing guests and neighbors who were still standing vigil in the backyard. Ada was laid out on a quilt across the dining room table, and they propped her head up on a pillow. The child had scratches and cuts on her face. The coroner noted a deep 2-inch cut on the left side of her face and some bruising on the child's shoulders. She had unusual marks around the neck, and upon closer examination with a lantern kind of up close, revealed they were finger-like bruising, indicating that someone had strangled the child.
Oh my gosh.
He determined the hyoid bone had been broken. Coroner Hatcher did not like what he saw. When everyone was ushered out of the room but family, Hatcher informed the Lances their daughter had been strangled.
So they're already dealing with the death of a child.
Yes.
And they're thinking some kind of terrible freak accident.
Yes.
And with the whole being in a pit of excrement, that's a bad.
It's just horrible.
It's just a terrible, terrible situation. And now they're having this revealed to them by the coroner, by a trusted authority.
So after he alerts the family and lets them know what's going on, he makes them all leave the room so he can perform a bit of an autopsy in their dining room.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I mean, 1900, it's, so some antiquated things going on here.
Well, yeah, but he's just trying to figure out what happened.
Well, he cuts open the girl's chest just a little bit, which is filled with feces. It appeared as though she had been alive when violently forced through the 12 to 15-inch hole of the outhouse seat.
Jeez.
He noted bruising on her thighs and around the vaginal area. Further examination showed the hymen had been ruptured and there was also fluid present. And he assumed what that meant. So Hatcher could see a heinous sexual assault had been committed against this child. Since becoming a coroner in 1898, Hatcher had never seen such an awful crime committed. And he will, eventually say that to the press.
Right.
The Lances broke down at the news of Hatcher's discovery. Fred wailed and screamed, quote, "She's just a little girl. What kind of sick son of a bitch would do this?" He then stormed through the house to the backyard and told the awaiting crowd, quote, "She's been murdered. He choked and raped her." The crowd was horrified. Women fainted. There was screaming, shrieking, wailing that could be heard for blocks. The emotions ranged from anguish to rage as some members yelled, "We gotta get him. We gotta hang the son of a bitch." Small groups formed, roving the neighborhood, beginning in the alley. Someone said, quote, "A shit-covered rope would be too good for this bastard."
Wow.
So they're ready to go lynch somebody.
Yeah, they're straight to vigilante justice.
Yeah.
Because of the horrible nature of this.
Yes. I mean, this is a child they all knew.
That they were all around that evening, basically.
Yes. So whoever did this had they were pretty brazen.
Yeah.
Right? Hatcher told the family he would return at 10 a.m. the next morning when there was more light out to further examine the child and a more accurate report could be made. I mean, imagine this. You can't even do a full examination because it's so dark.
Yeah.
We live in such different times. I mean, it's hard to imagine.
Well, and that matters, and it makes sense that he would want to come back first thing in the morning and maybe get some clearer answers.
He assured the Lances that he would work closely with police to, quote, "catch the animal who had done this." Meanwhile, the detective had gone to call the precinct, informing the chief there had been a murder and that more patrolmen were needed as soon as possible. Dayton's chief of police was John Newton Allebach, and he arrived at the scene. He was a former cavalryman and a scout who'd fought in Montana, but none of that prepared him for the horrors of the Lance home. Again, he will say it was just absolutely terrible what happened to this child and seeing this poor family. Allebach was disturbed the child had likely been murdered around 11 p.m. And that he was not dispatched to the home until around 3 a.m. So he's already kind of angry that this investigation
Like he was
started very late.
He should have been called, in his opinion, he should have been called as soon as
Immediately.
the coroner thought that there may be foul play.
Yes. The scene was contaminated as footprints had been trampled in the backyard because, again, you've got like 70 people out there. Let's see. Evidence had been burned. Remember they had said to burn the clothes that she was wearing? And though forensics were still in their infancy, he was pretty outraged that this crime scene had been violated, that the body had been tampered with, and that the clothing had been destroyed. Virtually all evidence was gone, and the perpetrator had a several hours head start. Law enforcement was able to make a few wax molds of cane prints near the outhouse.
Damn.
Well,
I'm kind of surprised that there was any forensics at this point. You know what I mean? So, or just their mentality about scene integrity and things like that. I'm surprised.
Well, a boarder who lived nearby named Nathan Emmons, a veteran of the Civil War who had lost a leg, told Carrie Lance that the police might be looking for a person with a cane, and he wanted to let her know that he was leaving town and didn't want to be considered a suspect.
Because he has a cane.
Yeah. Carrie Lance thought this was extremely suspicious, telling him, quote, "I think you should tell the police yourself." And by the time she came back with Chief Allaback to meet this guy at the door, he had already left. So a search for him ensued. Hatcher returned at 10 a.m. with 2 physicians in tow to perform an autopsy. Speaking to the press, he said, quote, "This deed was one of the foulest in the local annals of crime, and the barbarity evidence knew no bounds. The fiend, intent upon his brutish deed, considered the life of an innocent child no more valuable than that of a dumb animal." Hatcher theorized the killer waited outside, perhaps watching the party, and that was maybe someone known to the child. He had a club or a cane, the perpetrator, and that he had grabbed Ada as she went to use the outhouse. The perpetrator likely placed his hands around her throat or mouth to muffle screams, then wrestled her to the ground where she was beaten with the cane or the club.
Damn.
Then he dragged her to the other side of the fence, and that would have been where he probably raped her. And they suspected she may have already been dead or near death when she was sexually assaulted.
Wow.
Because of the clubbing or the
and the
bludgeoning.
strangulation.
Yeah.
Wow. So I mean, the parents have and the people in the home have to be thinking, was the killer here at the party?
Right.
You know?
Well, the autopsy showed finger marks and bruising around her neck, bruising and cuts on her face, and a deep 2-inch gash on the left side of her face where she was hit with this object that they assumed was a cane or a club. Assuming she was dead, the attacker had ripped most of the clothing when she was sexually assaulted. He then forced the child into the 12 to 15-inch opening of the outhouse seat. And she was too large to fit through, so the bruising on her shoulders indicated this was done with extreme force.
Damn.
So they felt they were looking for the attacker had to be a pretty strong individual.
A big, strong guy.
Yeah. The crime was estimated to have taken no more than 15 minutes. The perpetrator was able to use brute force and was a pretty brazen person who had no fear of neighbors. Because again, this is a party. There are people coming in and out of the house.
Well, you can
going to use the outhouse.
Yeah.
There's a water pump out there.
You can imagine people maybe drinking, stuff like that. I'm sure the outhouse was getting frequented by everyone. You know what I mean?
If you were at the party.
Well, I have 2 beers and I'm peeing all over the place.
I know.
Well, I'm just saying, so they're very brave to have done this in anywhere around the outhouse or backyard.
By noon, rumors and news stories of the murder saw packed trolleys, carriages, and horses carrying morbid curiosity seekers to the crime scene. So again, people have always had a fascination with crime and true crime.
They went way further than we do nowadays, right?
Thrill seekers peered through the family's windows and offered no privacy to this grieving family. Who can you imagine just like climbing up on their porch and looking in the window at this family?
I saw the family
who's crying and grieving.
Yeah, and being happy about doing it.
Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know.
A crime reporter named Donald Dunbar discovered the child's bloody undergarments in a thorny bush next door, which he handed over to the coroner. Now, again, this information, I'm not really sure what they meant by undergarments.
Right.
Because the child supposedly was wearing underpants. But he found some type of clothing item. So I don't know if it was like maybe a little undershirt.
Well, you know, and
Or what?
they did wear, typically wore many layers of clothing back then, depending on the
I was
fashion of
thinking
the day.
maybe like tights or something. I don't know.
There's no telling.
But he found these in some thorny bushes. Crime reporters at the time were often considered, quote, like part of the investigation team, as they knocked on doors, conducted interviews, and searched for evidence. And it seems like the Dayton police were kind of on board with having this guy out doing some of their work.
Okay.
Like interviewing people and asking questions.
Handling evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Theories abound. Neighbors provided lists of those who they felt were ne'er-do-wells, potential suspects, like a man with a cane, sort of exemplified those theories. So they were able to point out people who had canes that they thought were trouble.
They didn't like.
Yes.
It's like a witch hunt. It's like a witch hunt.
Well, a little bit, yeah. So at 4 p.m., police found that guy Emmons, the one who had approached Carrie Lance.
Hey, I'm leaving town, and I just don't want them to suspect me of anything.
Yeah, so they found him at a pub. He was the first suspect taken into custody. A crowd had gathered by now at this pub, so law enforcement had to be careful to ensure his safety because lynching was still a pretty common practice in heinous crimes, especially those involving children.
Yeah, this is the
So
perfect.
they knew they had to like get him out of the pub and to the jail for questioning, like in one piece.
This is a perfect recipe for that type of mob mentality or mob situation. You have a poor child's been brutally murdered and brutalized and sexually assaulted. I mean, this is a perfect recipe.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would be in the crowd wanting to get my hands on the person who did this, you know?
Well, who wouldn't?
We'd
I
be
think
leading the charge.
Most people would probably feel that way.
Yeah.
Emmons explained that he had lived in Dayton for around 10 years working in real estate and had rented a room near the Lances for a few years. So he was like a boarder in one of their neighbors' homes. He went on to say that real estate was tough now, so he had plans to move on. The chief and lead detectives all agreed they didn't think Emmons murdered Ada. He was a 56-year-old man with a missing leg.
Be kind of hard for him to do all this.
And he seemed kind of frail.
Right.
And they kind of didn't think that he was capable of it. Plus, he seemed like, quote, a nice enough fellow.
Well, and so he's really just nervous when people start talking about the killer had a cane. And here he is with a cane living in close proximity to the house. So it kind of makes sense for him to be like, hey, hold on a second. I just want to make sure no one thinks I did anything, especially if you already had plans to leave.
Or was he guilty?
Or was he guilty?
I know. Dayton police had no clues, no real suspects, and no idea where to look next. What amazed law enforcement was the boldness of the killer. There had been around 40 people attending the birthday party with considerable traffic to the outhouse and the water pump. So for hours, people were kind of in and out. There were only 46 members of the police force to patrol a city that had about 83,000 people. The crime rate was considerably high, and the police had a reputation for being unable to handle cases like rape and murder because they were so understaffed.
Damn.
Yeah, so people didn't have a whole lot of faith that law enforcement was going to deliver.
Another reason that the mob may feel like they need to handle it.
The community was fearful and angry over Ada Lance's murder. Law enforcement warned women about traveling alone. Women and children were told to stay home. There was a pretty noticeable drop in attendance at church, movies, and theatrical events. People just stopped going out. The Board of County Commissioners offered up $1,000 for information leading to an arrest in the murder. Several businessmen stated they would organize funds to hire a private detective in the case. A neighbor of the Lances named John Farber had refused to help in the search efforts and offered some confusing stories about his whereabouts at the time of the disappearance, which led to his arrest. Mrs. Farber, his mother, had heard 2 screams outside, but she didn't tell police because she thought that maybe they were her grandchildren who had been in the house at the time. Emmons' landlord reported that he had bathed at 5 a.m., just hours after Ada had been discovered. And this was unusual because he scheduled baths and often went weeks without bathing.
What the hell?
Yet once Emmons was released from custody, he packed up his belongings and left town, never to be seen again.
Damn.
Yeah. I thought that was really strange.
That is strange.
So now you think he's just some frail old legless man
Well, he seemed like a nice enough guy. He just had the one leg and all.
and took a surprise bath?
Aha!
Ha-ha! I'm going to go a few more weeks without bathing.
Oh my! Can you think about that for a second?
No.
How much money would it take for you to not bathe for a week?
I can't do it.
You can't. You're not even going to entertain
I
it.
can't. No.
I would be so itchy.
Dude, I'm telling you, I went on a canoe trip for a week, and I was in the damn ocean washing my hair in the salt water and scrubbing down with soap. And people are laughing at me because they're like, that's salt water. I'm like, I don't care.
You're still trying.
I'm trying. I can't. It's so gross. I have to bathe.
I bathe daily.
Yeah, people who don't bathe daily, I don't know.
No,
Now, I'm saying you can go like every other day.
I've done every other day here and there, but I
mean, know
typically
people
do
who
it daily.
that, and I'm like, okay. I mean, yeah, if you're just chilling around the house or something,
Yeah.
right? But I'm talking more than like a day or so.
2 or 3 days,
I don't,
5 days.
man, I know somebody and she laughs because she'll go like 4 days without bathing and she thinks it's funny. And I'm like, that's disgusting. Wash your stank ass.
Why I gotta be stank?
Well, if you go 4 days without, after what you've been talking about, you've been doing the last couple of days in
I
there,
should take 2 showers.
you need to triple up on the damn showers.
Oh gosh, I need a wire brush.
Just wash your ass.
Oh, I'm gonna wash my
Now,
ass.
I'm not talking to, I'm just saying in general, people.
Oh, okay.
Okay, soap and water don't cost that much.
No,
Wash. Use deodorant. It's hot out there. Ain't nobody trying to smell you.
I don't want to taste you when we're in the store together.
Yeah. I was just reminded of a time my daughter and I went to this, like the southeastern punk flea
Yeah.
market. And this was been a couple years ago.
Oh, this left a mark
and it
on
was
you.
in South Carolina.
You told me
and
about
we
it.
both were like, what the fuck? We were surrounded by people who had the worst BO ever.
Oh my gosh.
And everywhere we went, it was like people smelled terrible. I mean, it was just fucking awful. And she was like, what the fuck? Does nobody bathe? And I'm like, I guess not.
Damn.
Nobody bathes. Nobody's using deodorant. It's hot as hell. People sweating. And everybody was stinking. I mean, it was like so bad. Like the BO smells everywhere I went that we finally just were like, we got to get out of here.
It ruined it for
It was
you.
like making me sick.
You're ready
and then
to
I'm
go.
like, how is this a thing where people don't bathe?
I mean, I don't want to be part of
How
that.
do you go out somewhere in a public place and not wash your ass? So again, my advice, wash your ass. Okay? Go to the Dollar Tree, get you some cheap deodorant. Use it.
Get some of that with aluminum in it. It's better than none.
All your crevices. Okay, so as Ada's case went cold over the next year, 2 women were assaulted and another nearly attacked. One woman was raped near the train yard, only a few blocks from the Lance residence, by a, quote, tall, burly black man with huge hands.
Damn.
I was like, who is he, Candyman?
Sam Little.
Well, I'm like tall
Yeah.
with the big hands. Because
Yeah.
Tony Todd, I always thought he had big hands in that movie.
He's a big guy.
He's a big guy. He's very scary in that movie.
The first Candyman was
Can
a
I
scary.
just say, I was thinking about Candyman earlier today, actually, and I've got that DVD somewhere, and I'm like, oh, I might want to watch Candyman.
The first Candyman was terrifying.
Dude,
And it really scared me.
I had nightmares about Candyman.
Yeah.
Like, it was really creepy. Anyway, you're right, Sam Little. The victim claimed she could identify the man, but her German family, disgraced, fled back to their native country, to their homeland.
Because she was attacked.
Yeah, they were like so disgraced by it. It's a different time, Dylan.
The family's honor had been destroyed by her getting raped. I mean, what the hell?
People still act like that sometimes.
Or maybe they were just like trying to get her away from here. You know what I mean? Away from the place where she was attacked.
Within weeks of that assault, an attempt was made by a black man with huge hands who tried to pull a girl through the grandstand seats at a fairground circus event. He was chased and forced to stop when shots were fired. The victim, however, declined to press charges. In August of 1902, that same individual was caught prying shutters from a house, attempting to get at a young woman who was sitting in her living room.
Well, hold on. Somebody needs to do something with this guy.
I know.
Even if he's not the killer, he's obviously intent on harming someone.
This man washed cars in the train yard and was known for harassing young women in and around that railway area. He was arrested, fined, and released for the crime of trying to pry those shutters open.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his name is.
It's Huge Hands. Teddy Huge Hands. He can wash a car with one pass with his big ass hand.
With his big ass hands.
Jesus, it's like that hand on Double Dare that would come out and slap you. You know?
Yeah. Forgot about that hand on Double Dare. On October, wasn't there something that was like on Jackass?
It was Jackass.
And
They did a big hand.
It was Machine Gun Kelly.
Yeah.
And didn't they like do something with a hand, like punch him in the face or something with a big hand?
Yeah, they slapped him with a big hand or something.
That was great.
Or when they riding a bike or something.
Yeah.
And then it, like whoever lost, the big hand
came
hit
out
you.
and like punches you or something.
Yeah.
He deserves to get punched with a big hand.
He does.
Just because he's stupid looking.
He's stupid. How do you have that much money? You still look that stupid.
Stupid. I don't know.
Jesus.
Oh,
Can't take the trash
some
out.
Machine Gun Kelly fan out there like, what?
Yeah.
He's sexy.
Yeah, Eminem was wrong.
You can have your wrong opinion. That's okay.
No, he's whatever, but you just can't take the trash out of some people. You know?
No, I mean, it'd be like if we had money.
Well, yeah. Could you
We'd still be trashy.
Could you imagine?
Well, I mean, I can imagine having money, but yeah, I know we'd still be trashy as hell.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. No, we'd still be a lot trashy.
You think so? I don't think we're that trashy.
You know?
No.
I don't know. Maybe a little bit.
Just because I would hang up any item on my, instead of buying curtains, and I will hang up T-shirts.
That's a step too far for me.
Old towels with a hole in them
That's a
as
step
curtains.
too far. You cannot just buy curtains.
They do the same thing as
I'm
curtains.
so glad that when I met you, I've evolved you into a person who now, allows me to use your money to buy curtains.
Well, I was going to say the only reason we have curtains now is because you go out and get the curtains. I mean, let's be honest. I'm not that far removed from it. I got a bleach stained towel under the sink right there that will do a perfect job of curtaining.
The scrap towel?
Yeah.
It's a cleaning towel. Stop. On October 20th of 1902, Daisy Franks was assaulted by a black man. Her brother was shot trying to defend her. She was unable to make a positive lineup of several individuals whom were also suspects in the Lance case. Police suspected the same man was responsible for both crimes, like perhaps Ada's attack and the assault and shooting of the brother and sister.
Oh, okay. So they think it's the same individual.
Possibly. So after the murder, the Lance family tore down the outhouse and installed indoor plumbing. Yet the family never fully recovered from the murder of little Ada. 3 women in Cincinnati had been raped and murdered less than 1 mile from each other, and many tried to connect those cases to the Lance case. And we'll actually talk about that a little bit further as we get along in our story. That's going to kind of come back around. Leah Gilman had moved to Dayton in 1898. The widowed mother of 5 children had hoped there would be more opportunities for work in Dayton. She'd moved from Germantown. The area where Gilman lived was near Lakeside Amusement Park, the Veterans Home, and McCabe Park on the west side of town. Now, McCabe Park is that area that could get rowdy.
Oh, okay.
With the drunks and shootings and fights.
Sounds like a fun place.
Sluts.
Oh, you think there's some sluts down there?
Well, yeah. Who's not trying to look for a good time? That's where I'm going. There was a trolley service, which made the area enticing for new home buyers. 3 members of the Gilman family were employed at the National Cash Register plant. There was 25-year-old Fane and her sister, 19-year-old Donna, who worked in the bookbindery, while their 17-year-old brother Collins worked in the machine shop. They supported their sickly 53-year-old mother, Leah, she's also called Kate in some documents, who was practically immobilized by dropsy, which I don't really know what that is, and I didn't look it up.
Is that a disease?
I guess. It's an illness. I've heard of it, but I don't know what it does. But she had like an array of, ailments.
It's got like a cute name. It's like, oopsie, you got the dropsy.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, I don't think I want it.
Oh, because it completely immobilizes you?
Well, that, and I just don't want to have anything called dropsy. 30-year-old Bessie That was their other sister. She suffered from depressive episodes, so she primarily cared for their mother in the household while the other three siblings went to work every day. A younger child, they did have a little sister who was like 12. She attended school, and the eldest son was married and still lived in Germantown. Ada's murder had deeply troubled Mrs. Gilman, who was incredibly concerned with her daughter's safety. Donna and Fane had boyfriends. They were incredibly close sisters, too. They were like best friends. They shared a bedroom, just basically besties, Dylan. Shared their secrets. They liked to giggle, stay up late talking about their boyfriends.
Okay.
Fane was engaged to be married, and Donna expected a proposal soon. Donna was described as quite a beauty, Dylan. She had porcelain skin, high cheekbones. She attracted the gazes of many men. Her boyfriend, Stanley Anderson, was the son of a wealthy Cincinnati landowner. Donna was considered bubbly, sincere. She never had a thought she didn't express.
Okay.
So no filter, which her boyfriend thought was very charming and cute because she just said whatever popped in her brain. Kind of like you.
Out of her little porcelain face.
Donna and Stanley often strolled the soldiers' home grounds, volunteering to wheel around some of the guys who were in wheelchairs. And they enjoyed listening to the stories of the Civil War. So they were kind of familiar with that, that area and some of the people who lived there. On Monday, November 19th of 1906, Donna wasn't feeling well, so she stayed home from work. She penned a letter to her boyfriend, Stanley. The next day she went to work at the National Cash Registry, Register Bindery. I'll get that out.
Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
Gosh, she usually left at 5 p.m. and rode the trolley home, and her sister, they typically rode the trolley together, right? However, Fane had to stay behind to finish up some work. Donna was left making the long walk up the hill to her house alone in the winter darkness, which she did not like. Donna and Fane had plans to return to the factory that evening for a free concert. It was raining, so Donna borrowed an umbrella from a coworker and boarded the trolley, which rode down Brown Street and then transferred to a westbound 5th Street trolley. It took 1 hour to travel from her job to the final stop. She read a poetry book during the trolley ride. At 6:10, Donna got off at Groveland and National Avenue, which was only 2 blocks away from the Gilman home. However, it was dark and there were no street lights, and she had to pass through an area they called the Commons, which was kind of a wooded area. And she did not like doing this by herself.
Well, yeah, and the pitch black?
Yeah.
Hell, I would be unsettled.
When Fane and Collins arrived home, Leah asked, "Where is Donna? Did she get held up at work?" Fane said she wasn't sure where Donna was, explaining that they had plans to go see the Pittsburgh Orchestra later that night. Maybe she'd stayed in town with a friend and was going to just go to the concert. Fane said she was going to the concert with her fiancé, James, and would see Donna there. Later, they did go to the show, but they did not see her sister. Actually, no one had seen her. So when Fane is asking their coworkers and friends, have you seen Donna? No one knows where she is. When it was midnight, Fane hung a lantern on the porch and went to bed because Donna still wasn't home. And Donna never came home. She was also absent from work. Fane was noticeably upset, so her forelady allowed her to take the day off to look for Donna. Fane stopped by the office of Dr. Richard Gaugler, who was a friend that they had known back in Germantown, and he was like a really good family friend. It seems like they were really close. Like at some point he will say he considered Donna like a daughter to him. So she stops by his office and tells him that Donna is missing. So he's like, well, let me call the probate court to see if a marriage license has been issued.
Oh,
because his first thought was that maybe Donna and Stanley had decided to get eloped or to elope.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good thought, I guess. You got this young couple, they love each other. They're,
everybody's expecting they'll be married soon.
Right. And maybe they just did the deed and took off.
Yeah, I think that may be more common back in the day. It seems like a lot of people kind of ran off and got married. I don't think people really do that so much today.
Well, I mean, we eloped.
Did we?
Don't you think?
How? We're just grown-ups. We just did it.
Do you have to leave the area when you do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I always think eloping's like something that like young people do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to
Maybe
get
not.
eloped. I want to get eloped.
Maybe. I mean, we didn't really tell anybody, but we also don't like people, so.
We didn't tell anybody, but because there was no one to tell.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to keep your life private when you don't like anybody.
It's true.
Okay. So Leah told her son Collins that she had seen something down in the weeds by the commons just off the sidewalk and told him to go check it out. When he walked less than a block from their home, about 15 feet from the sidewalk, easily in the sight of neighboring homes, he approached a body lying on its left side.
Oh my gosh.
It was Donna.
Damn it.
She had cuts and scratches on her face, along with a massive purple bruise and a lot of swelling on her face. Her coat was buttoned all the way down to her ankles. She looked as though she had been punched or clubbed, maybe beaten with an object, because it was just the bruising was so significant.
Damn.
By now, Thane had joined her brother, and they both tried to rouse Donna, but sadly, she was dead. The siblings carried Donna's body back to the house, placing her on the kitchen floor. Neighbors had heard the screams and sobs and were now outside kind of watching the scene unfold. Soon, a few joined the Gilmans inside the house, where they were all just overcome with emotion. Collins called Dr. Gogler, who said he would be right over. He arrived at the home within 20 minutes, and it was now around 10 a.m. Donna had been missing for 2 days. A coroner named Walter Klein, who had followed Hatcher as the county coroner, because that was an elected position.
Yeah.
He's called, so he arrives pretty quickly after. The crime scene has been trampled by dozens of people, because by now you've got neighbors who are down there where her body was found, gawking, standing around.
Damn it, people.
I know. Just no scene integrity.
I mean, why you gotta be so damn nosy? I mean, seriously.
Whatever, you go vacuum the gravel if you thought you'd be able to catch a glance of something.
Well, no, I mean, I'm all up for some gossip, but I'm not going to be I would not go trample a crime scene.
Officials determined the attack had taken place in a different location and that Donna's body had been moved to like this sort of dumping ground. Her clothing was badly torn, possibly cut off with a knife. She had defensive bruising on her arms, and her undergarments were missing. She was lying in a muddy field and was soaking wet from rain, but there was no mud on her clothing.
Damn.
Which was very odd. And they were able to determine that she had been strangled and sexually assaulted. Bloodhounds went to work, but 3 days of rain had made the search difficult. Once word spread that about Donna's murder, pretty much mass chaos happened in the area. Spectators, reporters gathered. There were wagon tracks leading up to the spot where Donna was placed, which led investigators to believe that whoever killed her had brought her back the previous night and dumped her there using a wagon.
Okay.
Coroner Klein told Sheriff Wright, because this is actually going to be a county investigation where they lived, so the Dayton police aren't investigating, it's the sheriff's office. So the coroner told the sheriff that he thought the case was similar to the rape and murder of Ada Lance. He said, quote, "She was hit on the head, strangled, and then raped. Some of her clothing was missing the same way and in her backyard. And the guy did it at night with a party going on in the house. This guy dumped the body in the middle of the neighborhood in full view of the Gilman family, because they could see the dumping spot from their house.
Right.
That's why the mom said, there's something down there in the weeds. Go check it.
Damn. What a brazen criminal.
The county commissioners offered a $3,000 reward for the apprehension of the killer, and another $3,000 was raised by the owner of the National Cash Register Company and the employees.
Now, these would be large rewards.
Yeah.
Given inflation in today's dollars.
Yeah, I think the employees alone at the company raised $2,000 and the owner gave $1,000.
Yeah.
So people were like,
so this would be worth tens of thousands of dollars
yeah, people
today.
really they liked Donna and they really wanted this solved. So people were really willing to put in that extra cash for a reward. The mood in Dayton supported the lynching of the murderer when apprehended. So law enforcement felt it was kind of a race to find the killer first and hope to prevent a lynching.
Right.
Rumors circulated, and there was a small minority of people that felt the Gilman family was somehow involved in the murder of Donna. And I'll explain to you why, Dylan. There had been some domestic arguments at the Gilman residence, with one sister having pulled a knife on another at some point.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, there was some sort of knife fight between Fane and Bessie.
I'm going to cut you now, girl.
And Bessie did get cut.
Oh, shit.
Fane claimed it's because she was trying to take the knife from her sister and it was like an accident.
Oh, okay. But, if we weren't brandishing knives in the first place, nobody could get cut.
Yeah, so Bessie pulled a knife on her sister. Her sister tried to take it, and then Bessie was cut. So police were called out when that knife fight took place.
So they're familiar with the household.
Yeah, deputies had actually been called out to the Gilman residence twice in 6 months. And neighbors frequently heard like domestic squabbles, screaming, fighting, arguing. At one point, I guess the sister Bessie had come out on the lawn like screaming that her family was trying to hurt her or something. And
oh my
causing a
gosh.
big scene. Yeah.
Damn.
People thought it was suspicious that Leah Gilman seemed to know the location of her daughter's body before it was found, even directing her children to the location. Yet she was homebound, so there was no way that she could have committed the murder by herself.
Right.
Collins, Donna's brother, was questioned as a suspect, and he had, on the evening Donna had gone missing, he had taken the trolley home as well, but he had taken like a completely different route.
Which would seem unusual.
Yeah, and when asked about it, he tried to explain that he liked to ride that other trolley because his friends took that trolley.
Oh, okay.
But he had to walk kind of further to get home.
Well, that's reasonable. I mean, if you want to, yuck it up with your buddies a little bit on the ride home.
Criticism arose about the lack of cooperation between the Dayton Police Department and the Sheriff's Office to work together in solving these two murders. Over 25,000 people visited the crime scene area.
Damn.
Where Donna Gilman was dumped.
What y'all going to do? We're going to go visit that crime scene of that girl where she is killed at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring a picnic.
Yeah, and wear your big good boots because we got some scene
Mom?
trampling to do.
Now, Mama, honey, I'm going to take you on a date. Put on your good hat.
And your boots.
We're going to go down here to the crime scene.
We're going to go down there and trample some fucking evidence.
Lines formed at the trolley stops with people waiting for hours to catch the trolley. Horses, bicycles, cars, and just walkers plagued the site. There were people everywhere.
So they just want to see where the body was found.
Yes.
Basically.
And hoping they can catch a glimpse of the family and watch the investigators come and go.
Peer in the windows.
Yes. That's the kind of shit they were doing.
That's way too much. People were hardcore on that back then.
A trolley conductor told investigators that a black man had gotten off with Donna at the stop on the night she disappeared. The Cincinnati Enquirer found parallels between Donna's murder and that of Alma Steinway and Lulu Mueller. So in 1904, I told you we would get back to this earlier in the story. So in 1904, the Cumminsville neighborhood of Cincinnati was rocked with the brutal murders of 3 women. 6 years later, there were 2 more gruesome attacks within that 1 mile radius.
Damn.
So in this one neighborhood, you had...
Is that 5?
5 homicides.
You think it's the same killer?
Well, some people think it's the work of the same person, Dylan. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So more than a century later, people wonder if those homicides were the work of one or more villains. And that just remains a mystery because the Cumminsville Ripper has never been solved.
Okay.
That's what he was called, the Cumminsville Ripper. Yet there were multiple similarities in the crimes. Donna was walking alone in the dark, the wooded area known as the Common, where the killer could easily hide himself. One of the victims, Mary McDonald, and the other, Alma Steinway, were attacked in a similar fashion in a dark, kind of wooded area. The killer responsible for Donna's murder was likely a disorganized, impulsive person who didn't fear attacking in public and was a sexual deviant. And so a lot of people thought the Cumminsville Ripper was responsible for her murder because it was a similar thing. It's this 1 mile radius, this neighborhood, that's very busy, dense housing, and it's the kind of neighborhood where everybody knows everybody. And this person's attacking these women with no, seemingly no fear of getting caught.
Right. Which makes you believe they're operating in an area they're familiar with.
And Cincinnati is not that far from Dayton. It's 50 miles.
Yeah, right.
So it would be easy for someone to, travel between the two. Or if someone lived in Cincinnati, possibly have moved on to Dayton, later after those attacks took place.
Well, it's not outside of reason. I mean, it could happen.
David Curtis, known as Baby Dave, was the 27-year-old adopted son of James Curtis, a painter who lived at the nearby soldiers' home where Donna often went with her boyfriend and volunteered and kind of walked the grounds. He was described by associates as a, quote, half-wit.
Oh.
He became a suspect and was interviewed by law enforcement. During that time, Baby Dave confessed to the murder of Donna Gilman. But later, Curtis said he was threatened into confessing by a detective named Frank McBride. And public opinion was that Curtis had been coerced into confessing.
He got Jesse miskellied.
He was eventually cleared of the Gilman murder. On December 19th of 1906, Donna's body was exhumed because investigators felt they needed to prove that Donna Gilman had not been sexually assaulted, because they had a theory that her family had killed her. But in order to make this theory make sense, they needed to eliminate the possibility she was sexually assaulted.
Oh, okay.
Because they felt her family was involved, but the rape part didn't make sense.
Right.
So they were trying to figure out if she had been sexually active, like with her boyfriend, and that maybe they had had sexual relations like in the days before she had been killed.
Right.
That kind of thing. So they want to exhume the body to prove there wasn't a rape, and that way they could push forward with arresting the Gilmans. Her mother, Leah, was arrested on this day that the body was exhumed, charged with murder, but her failing health prevented them from jailing her. So they sent her to a hospital where she was basically under close supervision.
So they feel strongly that the family did something to her.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of evidence of like domestic violence in this household and possible like child abuse, because Donna had confided in coworkers that there were times she was afraid to go home.
Damn.
Her mother, I guess, and her older sister, they would hit her.
Well, that's really sad that she was living in an environment like that.
Her two children, Fane and Collins, were arrested as accessories in their sister's murder. The siblings pled not guilty at their trial. Collins testified that David Curtis had admitted to killing Donna, not only to police, but that he had told him personally, "Oh yeah, I killed your sister."
Damn.
When Leah Gilman heard arrest warrants were issued for her children, she tried to jump out of the second-story window at the Miami Valley Hospital. So she tried to commit suicide. She was then examined by two psychologists who determined that she was healthy enough to stand trial. Once at trial, Donna's coworker testified that Donna had been frequently abused at the home. Once Leah had locked her daughter in the closet because Donna had asked for a new dress.
How dare you, Donna?
There was also another report that Donna had told her mother that she needed a winter coat, and that she got into like trouble for that as well. And she's the one working every day.
What the hell, dude?
The two siblings posted $5,000 bonds and were released. By April of 1907, the family was cleared of the murder. And on December 21st of 1907, Leah passed away from natural causes. A man named James Rogers, who was a transient from New York, was also arrested for Donna's murder, but later released. There was another veteran who lived at that veterans home. His name was William Parleton, and he was a veteran of the Spanish-American War. At the time of Donna's murder, he was found with bruises on his face and blackened eyes and lurking near the crime scene. Although he refused to discuss how he had gotten the injuries, he was questioned by police, but later released because they didn't really have any evidence other than somebody had beaten the shit out of him.
Why were you lurking by the crime scene?
So this is where we're going to end part 1, and next week we'll be back with part 2.
Wow, what a crazy story.
It is.
I mean, it's terrorized this entire area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the Gilman household and the Lance, I mean, these are just a few blocks away from each other.
Right.
This is not like a distance apart.
Yeah.
So someone's kind of terrorizing this community.
Damn. That poor little girl.
It's terrible.
Poor Donna and those other women you brutalized. Someone's very violent. It's just a monster hiding amongst them.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that, Heather.
You're welcome.
I've never, ever heard this story, of course, and learned a lot about Dayton. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I knew you needed to learn about Dayton today.
Well, you know what? Dayton's all right. You know, I think it's good.
I've done damn driven through there about 100 times.
Sounds like they had a whole lot of industry, which to this day, kind of you can tell they still have a lot of that kind of work and stuff around. So it kind of makes sense that the area thrived. The National Cash Register Company, that was a big deal.
Cha-ching.
Cha-ching. All right, so I'm sure we'll be bringing the second part of this in the very near future, yeah?
Yeah, next week we'll release part 2, and of course we'll have a midweek episode coming your way. If you've ever thought about joining Patreon, it's a good time to do that. Patreon.com/Mountain Murders Podcast. The other day we dropped a fairly long episode.
That was a great story.
We had a really long episode on the barbecue murders.
Yeah, and we have Heather has another one ready. We're going to get on to that and get that dropped this week sometime.
Yeah, and we have some other things in the works for Patreon.
We do.
So we're really trying to put more focus on getting Patreon jazzed up.
We love our patrons.
It's true.
We love all our listeners.
If you have a listener story, something you'd like to share with us, we would love to do our the trashiest thing you've heard this week.
Yeah, we
Email
really
us mountainmurderspodcast@gmail.com.
We really want to do the segment Trash Talk because those are really fun stories. We love them. So if you have a really trashy story, either you were involved or even something someone told you, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we love trash. We are trash. Stay trashy. Bye, Dylan.
Bye.